Welcome to another deep dive. We are just so thrilled to have you here with us today.
Yeah, we really are. It's great to be jumping into this.
And, whenever we sit down to look at the materials and do the research for these discussions, we really try to keep you, the curious learner who's listening right now, right in the front of our minds.
Exactly, because we know you're looking for more than just those surface level summaries.
Right. You're looking for the mechanics behind the mundane, the sort of hidden structures in our daily interactions, and the really subtle ways we can optimize not just our productivity, but our actual understanding of the whole human experience.
Yeah, which is a huge undertaking, but so worth it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So today's mission is squarely focused on a part of life that I think we completely take for granted, which is the language we use to narrate our own daily reality.
It is just such a phenomenal area of focus. I mean, we spend the vast majority of our lives in these mundane spaces, right? Like
Yeah.
commuting and working and doing laundry or eating breakfast, yet we rarely stop to examine the actual vocabulary we use to frame those hours.
Which is precisely why our source material for this deep dive is so uniquely revealing. We're pulling from a transcript of an English learning video today.
Right.
Specifically, it's a video geared toward upper intermediate to advanced learners, so the B2-C1 level. And it comes from a YouTube channel called Speak English with Class.
The specific lesson is titled, Talk About Your Day in English.
Yeah. Now, on the surface, this is ostensibly just a functional language lesson.
Yeah.
It features two instructors walking through the timeline of a completely normal day to teach vocabulary. They just use their own lives as examples.
Right. But if you look closer, this transcript acts as a rather profound psychological mirror.
It really does. It forces us to confront the default and incredibly sterile answers we always give when someone asks us how our day was.
Oh, yeah, we all rely on the same tired script.
Fine.
Busy.
Yeah.
Exactly. But what this material actually offers is a vastly richer and more precise vocabulary to describe that granular human experience of just getting through a Tuesday. What's fascinating here is that the underlying premise of this lesson gets right to the heart of what psychologists call emotional granularity.
Emotional granularity.
Yeah. Mastering communication, whether you're acquiring a second language or just trying to be more articulate in your native tongue, isn't merely about stringing together complex grammar. It's about accurately capturing specific, nuanced emotional states.
Right. It's the difference between saying I feel bad and saying I feel scattered.
Precisely. The source material is brilliant because it recognizes that our daily routines are filled with rich micro-emotional experiences that usually go completely unnamed.
And when we lack the vocabulary to define those shifts in our energy, from the morning alarm all the way to the evening reset, we often become victims of a vague, generalized stress.
We do. And that concept of emotional granularity is going to be the engine for our entire conversation today.
So we are going to walk through a typical day chronologically, just mirroring the structure of the source material. And it starts naturally in the morning.
Right out of the gate.
Right. Out of the gate, the instructors make a very deliberate distinction between two opposing morning realities. They talk about the Instagram morning versus the honest morning.
Oh, the Instagram morning.
Right. And they advocate strongly for embracing a morning routine that is quirky, which they define as being a bit strange but authentic and interesting.
It's not an aesthetic you post online.
No, it's just the unfiltered reality of waking up.
And that distinction immediately targets the performative culture that surrounds modern productivity.
Like the pressure.
Yeah. The Instagram morning implies a massive cognitive load just to start the day. It's the pressure of waking up effortlessly at 5 a.m. and executing an hour of flawless yoga in perfect lighting.
Writing in a gratitude journal with a calligraphy pen.
Exactly. It's performative perfection. But the honest morning, as the source describes it, it begins with a very different, much more recognizable reality. It begins with the quiet negotiation with the alarm clock.
Oh, I love that phrase, the quiet negotiation.
Yeah.
It just perfectly captures the internal friction of 6:30 a.m.
It really does.
It's that dark, half-conscious bargaining session where you lie there calculating exactly how many minutes you can sacrifice from your shower time to buy more sleep.
And we've all done that math.
We all have. But the source notes the inherent danger in this negotiation, because sometimes the bed wins.
And when the bed wins, you do what the source describes as going overboard with the snooze button.
Going overboard, right. One snooze is a buffer. 3 snoozes means you've gone overboard, and now you have actively sabotaged your own timeline.
Which puts you behind in the psychological race before your feet have even touched the floor.
Yeah.
Going overboard shifts your nervous system into a state of panic before you are even fully conscious. And this brings us to one of the most striking visual metaphors in the entire transcript, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yes. The penguin.
Yes. When discussing how the morning physically starts, one of the speakers describes sitting up on the edge of the bed like a confused penguin.
It's just a highly specific and incredibly accurate image.
Mm-hmm.
You aren't a majestic eagle greeting the dawn. You are a confused penguin.
It speaks to the physiological reality of sleep inertia. The confused penguin state is that liminal space where your body is physically vertical, but your executive function has not yet booted up.
You are awake, but you lack spatial and temporal awareness.
Yeah.
You don't quite know what year it is or what your immediate responsibilities are.
Right. And to combat this vulnerable state, the source outlines a specific, purely mechanical tactic. Sitting on the edge of the bed for 30 seconds in absolute silence.
Just breathing.
It's just breathing. No screens, no input.
Which sounds simple, but it completely flies in the face of our default habit, which is immediately grabbing the phone to check notifications.
And that is exactly the trap the 30-second sit is designed to avoid. It's not framed as a grand spiritual meditation. It is functional grounding.
Because as the transcript points out, if you bypass that silent pause and let the digital world rush into your brain while you are still a confused penguin, your mind becomes instantly noisy.
You bypass your own internal transition and immediately adopt the agenda of your inbox.
And the outcome, using their vocabulary, is that you spend the rest of the morning feeling scattered.
That scattered feeling is so recognizable.
Yeah, it's a kinetic, directionless energy where you're moving fast but achieving very little. You're bouncing from the bathroom to the kitchen to the bedroom without actually completing a single task.
And speaking of the bedroom, the source moves from that initial waking state right to the wardrobe.
Oh, the daily existential crisis in front of the closet.
Yes. Which I think deserves some real scrutiny here. You're just staring at your clothes thinking, who am I?
Yep.
What is my style? Why do I even own this?
Right. That moment in front of the wardrobe is a perfect microcosm of decision fatigue. And it's compounded by the sleep inertia we just talked about.
You aren't just picking out fabric to keep you warm. You are trying to construct a professional and personal identity for the next 12 hours.
And the cognitive load required to make aesthetic, weather-appropriate, and culturally acceptable choices while your brain is barely functioning is immense.
It really is. And the source follows that heavy cognitive moment with a brilliant observation about breakfast that highlights the same tension between reality and performative culture.
Yes, they contrast two different breakfasts. They note that plain toast is honest, while a complex green smoothie is just marketing.
The linguistic choice of the word marketing there is sharp.
Yeah.
It suggests that the green smoothie represents an idealized, hyper-optimized version of ourselves that we want to project to the world, or perhaps even just to ourselves.
Right.
Toast, on the other hand, represents the unvarnished, purely functional reality of a Tuesday morning, when your primary objective is simply acquiring baseline calories to survive the commute.
I do want to push back on that slightly, though. While I understand the source's point about performative optimization for a lot of people, taking the time to make the green smoothie isn't marketing at all. It's a genuine attempt to build a foundation of physical energy for a demanding day. It's an investment, not an advertisement.
That is a very fair counterpoint. The pursuit of optimal nutrition isn't inherently performative.
Right.
But if we look at the specific context the instructors are establishing, they are targeting the pressure associated with these routines. The critique is aimed at the aestheticization of the morning. If blending that smoothie causes you stress because it requires 20 ingredients and a meticulously clean kitchen before 7 a.m., then it has crossed from functional nutrition into performative burden.
The implicit argument, then, is that accepting our quirky, messy, toast-eating realities actually serves a protective psychological purpose.
Exactly. By acknowledging the messiness, we reduce our baseline anxiety. We stop failing at the impossible Instagram standard and start succeeding at our honest reality, which preserves cognitive energy for the actual workday.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that reframing from failure to honest reality is a huge relief valve. It allows you to move through the morning without self-judgment.
It does.
Which brings us to the next major transition point in the day. We've navigated the alarm clock negotiation, the wardrobe identity crisis, and the honest breakfast. Now we reach the threshold.
The front door.
The front door. The source refers to this as the big door moment.
The big door moment is a universal modern ritual. It is the final checkpoint between the private sanctuary and the public arena.
The physical description they provide is incredibly accurate, too. It's that full-body pat-down you do, tapping your pockets like you're going through a TSA security screening.
Keys, wallet, phone, bag.
Exactly, the basic survival items.
Yeah.
But the detail that really elevates this section is their commentary on headphones.
Right.
The instructors equate leaving the house without headphones to leaving the house without your brain.
That equation headphones equals brain speaks volumes about how we navigate urban and corporate environments today.
Yeah, they're not just for music anymore.
No headphones have evolved far beyond devices for consuming audio. They are primarily utilized as an auditory shield. They are a socially acceptable do not disturb sign.
Which transitions perfectly into how the source analyzes the commute itself. They contrast two radically different approaches to the journey between home and work.
The first approach is the mindful walk. The commute might only be 10 minutes, but the intention is to use that time to actively notice the environment.
Right. The light hitting the buildings, the weather, the sleepy expressions of other people holding their coffee cups.
It's a deliberate practice of people watching and environmental awareness.
And notice the specific emotional outcome attributed to that mindful walk in the transcript. The speaker notes that this active observation makes them feel like a part of the city rather than just a solitary component of their own to-do list.
That is a profound psychological distinction. Consciously connecting with the shared physical environment grounds you. It pulls you out of your internal anxieties and places you firmly in the present reality of your community.
But then there is the second approach to the commute, which is the reality for anyone relying on public transit.
Yeah.
The bus, the subway, the crowded train.
Right.
The source describes this environment as being loud, chaotic, and full of unsolicited drama.
It's the free entertainment you didn't ask for.
Exactly. Someone is having a screaming match on a phone call, someone else is aggressively fighting with a malfunctioning ticket machine, and the sheer volume of sensory input is just overwhelming.
And how do we cope with that aggressive sensory environment, especially when we are still harboring some sleep inertia? The source introduces a highly functional phrasal verb to describe our defense mechanism.
We zone out.
We zone out.
Zoning out. It's the act of completely disconnecting your attention from your immediate surroundings. You are physically sitting on the bus staring out the window, but mentally you have evacuated the premises.
Your eyes are open, but you are not seeing anything.
If we look at the mechanics of zoning out, it is essentially a spontaneous dissociative state. When the environment is too chaotic and we are facing the impending structured demands of the workday, our brain actively detaches to conserve energy.
We deploy the auditory shield of our headphones and we zone out. The commute becomes a null space, a void we use to protect our cognitive reserves.
So listeners should critically evaluate their own doorway dance. When you traveled to your destination this morning, did you use that transit time to connect with your environment, feeling integrated into your city?
Or did the sheer volume of the world force you to zone out as a necessary defense mechanism?
Right. And recognizing which version of the commute you experienced sets the baseline for everything that follows. Because once that commute ends, the real deep water begins.
You walk into the building, you sit at your desk, you open the laptop, and you are instantly hit with a tidal wave of input.
Emails, direct messages, calendar invites small crises that developed overnight.
And the source provides some of the most critical vocabulary of the entire lesson to describe the reality of this moment. They draw a hard line between feeling swamped and feeling frazzled.
Swamped versus frazzled. This distinction is arguably the most valuable linguistic tool provided in the transcript, precisely because it addresses the concept of emotional granularity we discussed earlier.
We have a terrible habit in modern work culture of using the word busy as a catch-all term for any form of occupational discomfort.
But busy provides no diagnostic value.
None at all. Let's rigorously break down the nuanced difference between swamped and frazzled, because correctly identifying your state completely alters how you must respond to it. Let's begin with swamped.
The imagery the source uses for swamped is visceral. They describe it as standing in deep water that is made entirely of tasks.
The deep water metaphor is perfect because it highlights that being swamped is an entirely situational external condition.
Right.
It is a physics problem of volume and time. You simply have a massive influx of demands. 5 reports due 80 unread emails back-to-back meetings. The water level of your responsibilities has risen above your head.
But, and this is the crucial part, your internal cognitive machinery might still be functioning perfectly well. You are just surrounded by an excessive volume of work.
Now contrast that deep water with feeling frazzled. If swamped is external, frazzled is deeply internal.
The source defines frazzled as feeling very tired, highly stressed, and chaotic inside your own mind. The specific phrase they use is having an overcooked brain.
An overcooked brain. It implies that the internal wiring is beginning to short circuit. Frazzled is a state of cognitive fraying. You aren't necessarily drowning in a high volume of tasks. You might only have one or two things to do, but your executive function is so depleted that you cannot process them.
We've all experienced that overcooked state. It's when you open an email, stare at it for 2 minutes without comprehending a single sentence, minimize the window, open a spreadsheet, immediately close the spreadsheet, and then just stare at your desktop wallpaper.
You are incapable of sequential action. The messiness isn't on your desk. It is inside your prefrontal cortex.
And this is where the diagnostic power of these words becomes clear. The source outlines a very specific tactical response for when you realize you are swamped, when you are in that external deep water.
The primary directive is to arrest the panic response. You stop, you pull out a physical piece of paper, and you make a short list.
You ask yourself a ruthless filtering question. What actually needs my brain right now?
What actually needs my brain right now? It forces triage. It forces you to separate the urgent and complex from the merely noisy.
And once you identify the immediate priorities, the source suggests a counterintuitive maneuver. You find a few incredibly simple, low-stakes tasks, and you choose to whip through them.
To whip through tasks means to execute them with extreme speed and efficiency. You might whip through sorting your inbox or approving a few routine requests.
The psychological purpose of whipping through these minor items isn't actually to make a significant dent in the workload. It is to break the paralysis.
It's manufacturing momentum. When you are standing in that deep water, your brain freezes because the whole picture is overwhelming.
By whipping through 3 simple tasks in 5 minutes, you secure quick wins. You send a signal to your nervous system saying, I am capable of action. I am exerting control over my environment.
It lowers the psychological water level just enough to let you breathe.
Furthermore, the instructors weave in a critical observation about our circadian rhythms and cognitive capacity. They note that the late morning, often between 10 a.m. and noon, is generally our best brain time.
This is the prime biological real estate for deep, focused work. Writing, strategic planning, complex problem solving.
But the source immediately introduces the caveat. It is the best brain time, provided you do not actively destroy it by obsessively checking your phone.
Precisely. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is the danger of mismanaging the swamp state. If you understand your cognitive rhythms, you whip through the minor administrative noise early, and you rigorously defend that late morning window for deep work.
You put the auditory shield on, you ignore the phone, and you focus.
If, however, you lack that discipline, you allow the constant pinging of notifications to fracture your attention. You continuously context switch between minor crises and social media.
And the inevitable result of that fractured attention is that you rapidly transition from being externally swamped to being internally frazzled.
Which brings us back to the power of emotional granularity. If you possess the vocabulary to correctly label your friction, the word itself dictates the solution.
If you sit back and realize I am swamped, the remedy is structural. You need a list, you need prioritization, and you need to whip through the noise.
But if you sit back and realize I am frazzled, lists won't help you.
Exactly right. If you are frazzled, your brain is overcooked. The solution must be physiological. You have to walk away from the screen, disrupt the environment, drink a glass of water, look at something distant to relax your ocular muscles and allow the cognitive machinery to cool down.
You cannot whip through a frazzled state. You have to step out of it.
It's remarkable how much agency you can reclaim, simply by using the correct adjective. But regardless of how expertly you manage the deep water, or protect your best brain time, eventually the biology of the day catches up with you.
Your physical and mental energy inevitably crashes.
And that introduces the great pivot point of the day, which the source quite rightly identifies as the undisputed hero.
Lunch. Lunch is the demarcation line. The source frames our relationship with this midday break with absolute bluntness. If you skip it or if you compromise it, you will suffer.
The instructors use a great line. They say the after-lunch version of you will come and ask, why did you do this to me?
It's such an accurate portrayal of the regret we feel at 3 p.m. when we realize we tried to power through on just coffee and sheer willpower.
You have to consume actual restorative calories, and ideally you have to do it without staring at a spreadsheet simultaneously. If you fail to respect the lunch boundary, the afternoon becomes a punishing landscape.
And the landscape of the afternoon is fundamentally different from the morning. The energy dynamics shift entirely.
The transcript introduces a classic proverb that perfectly encapsulates the specific danger of the post-lunch work environment. Haste makes waste.
It's an old idiom, but it maps perfectly onto the modern corporate experience. When you hit that post-lunch slump, a certain panic often sets in. You look at the clock, you realize you haven't accomplished your primary goals, and your natural instinct is to accelerate.
You try to move faster to compensate for your fading energy. But haste acting with excessive speed and insufficient thought inevitably generates waste.
The source provides a painfully recognizable example of this cascade of errors. Driven by that post-lunch haste, you attempt to blast through your communications. You draft an email too quickly, you fail to proofread, and you send it to the wrong stakeholder.
Or you omit the crucial attachment.
Right. And the immediate result. You now have to draft a second apologetic email to correct the first. Your attempt to save 2 minutes of time has now cost you 10 minutes of remedial work, plus a significant deposit of professional embarrassment and stress.
You have actively manufactured more work for yourself because you refuse to accept your reduced cognitive speed.
That acceleration is deadly.
But the urge to rush isn't the only threat in the afternoon. The source highlights another massive, often unrecognized drain on our resources during the second half of the day.
The depletion of our social energy.
Yes. This is a vital concept to explore. The exhaustion we feel at 3:30 p.m. is rarely just task-based fatigue. The afternoon is typically the territory of collaboration.
It is crowded with meetings, synchronization calls, client interactions, and endless digital chatter. You are no longer just swamped with data, you are swamped with personalities.
And navigating those personalities requires a tremendous amount of invisible effort. It requires active listening, reading the room, managing your own facial expressions, filtering your responses, and maintaining a veneer of professional enthusiasm.
That kind of emotional labor burns a completely different, much more volatile type of fuel. When your social battery drops to zero, the prospect of jumping on another 30-minute video call feels physically painful.
Which is why the source doesn't merely diagnose the depletion of social energy. It provides a sophisticated linguistic tool for self-preservation. They introduce the skill of learning how to politely wiggle out of obligations.
Wiggle out of. I want to spend some time on this because it's a brilliant phrasal verb.
It really is. Notice the physical imagery it invokes. Wiggling implies being in a tight spot, a trap, or an uncomfortable constraint.
You don't violently smash the trap. You don't aggressively push your way out. You use subtle, smooth, friction-free movements to extract yourself.
That is the essence of workplace diplomacy. Establishing boundaries to protect your social energy isn't about being confrontational or constantly deploying a hard no. It is about utilizing clever, gentle language to navigate away from productivity traps without damaging relationships.
The examples the instructors provide are master classes in this kind of gentle pivoting. Imagine you receive a calendar invite for a poorly defined hour-long meeting at 4 p.m.
And your social energy is already critical.
Exactly. Instead of accepting it and sitting there resentfully or declining it and appearing uncooperative, you deploy the wiggle. You reply and ask, could we handle this via email to save everyone some time?
Or, if the issue genuinely requires a discussion but lacks immediate urgency, you use the timeline pivot. Would it make sense to push this sync to next week when we have the finalized data in front of us?
It's highly effective. You are aggressively protecting your cognitive reserves, ensuring you aren't a hollow shell by 5 p.m., but you are cloaking that self-preservation in the language of efficiency and team benefit.
No one is offended, but you have successfully escaped the trap.
The ability to gracefully wiggle out of unnecessary interactions is a mandatory survival skill for anyone operating in a highly collaborative environment. It is the only way to retain enough agency to reach the end of the day intact.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this brings us to the most critical decision point of the entire timeline, the late afternoon.
The clock is moving toward 5 p.m.
We've survived the morning negotiations. We navigated the deep water of the midday tasks. We successfully wiggled out of the draining afternoon meetings. But now, we experience a profound psychological fracture.
The source describes this beautifully. Your body is still physically sitting in the ergonomic chair at your desk, but your brain has already left the building. Your brain is already lying on the sofa at home.
That mind-body split is a universal phenomenon. It represents the absolute exhaustion of your daily reserves, and it forces a definitive choice.
Do you ignore the fracture, drink more caffeine, and keep pushing, pretending that you are a machine capable of infinite linear output? Or do you look at your task list, assess what can realistically be moved to tomorrow without causing a crisis, and officially call it a day?
It requires a surprising amount of discipline to choose the latter. There is always a temptation to be the hero who clears the entire board before leaving.
But the instructors introduce a fantastic idiom to cut through that delusion. They suggest that at this moment you need to cut to the chase.
Cut to the chase.
Yeah, it's an idiom derived from early cinematic history, referring to skipping the boring exposition and getting straight to the exciting pursuit scene. In this context, it means abandoning the pretense, stripping away the rationalizations, and addressing the fundamental reality of the situation.
And the fundamental reality of 5 p.m. is that tomorrow exists. If you attempt to force another hour of low-quality, frazzled work out of your overcooked brain, you aren't actually being productive.
You are simply borrowing energy from tomorrow with an exorbitant interest rate. You will wake up the next morning already in a deficit.
The advanced skill the source is teaching here isn't just about English vocabulary, it's about executive function. The skill is knowing when to execute the hard stop, knowing when to physically close the laptop and walk away.
And closing the laptop is merely the initiation of the transition. The source pays very close attention to the mechanics of returning to your personal space.
They really do. They provide a vivid, almost cinematic description of what needs to occur the moment you finally walk back through your front door. They outline the necessity of the small reset.
The small reset is the evening equivalent of the 30-second sit on the bed we discussed this morning. It's a deliberate transition ritual.
You walk in. You put your bag down in its designated spot. You immediately strip off the armor of your work clothes and put on comfortable domestic clothes.
And then, crucially, you just stand there in absolute silence.
No television in the background, no music playing, no checking the phone. Just existing in quiet space for a minute, consciously letting your shoulders drop.
The physiological goal of this reset is to systematically sever the connection to the high alert state of the workday. Your nervous system has been marinating in stress hormones and constant stimuli for 10 hours.
If you bypass the small reset and immediately start frantically cooking or scrolling through social media, you drag that frazzled deep water energy directly into your sanctuary.
The reset is the airlock between the public arena and the private self.
And successfully navigating that airlock sets the stage for the rest of the night. The instructors outline two dramatically different versions of an evening, and the contrast is incredibly sharp.
Let's look at version 1. They call this the wholesome evening.
Now, wholesome is a word that often gets a bad rap in modern culture. It can sound cheesy or overly sanitized.
But in this context, it simply means an evening that is genuinely good for your emotional and physical health. It's an evening stripped of hyperstimulation.
It involves cooking a simple meal without rushing, perhaps putting on some low-tempo music, engaging in actual uninterrupted conversation with a partner or a friend, or sitting down to read a physical book. It is a gentle, low-stakes environment.
The defining characteristic of the wholesome evening is the absence of performance and the absence of rapid input. And the measurable result of engaging in a wholesome evening is how you feel the next morning.
The source uses the word rejuvenated.
You wake up feeling fresh, your cognitive slate is clean, and you actually possess new energy. You are prepared to engage with the new day rather than already being defensive against it.
Now contrast that rejuvenating piece with version 2. The instructors label this the "what did I just do with my time" evening.
A title that immediately evokes a very specific, very modern brand of regret.
We have all lived version 2. This is the evening where you bypass the small reset, collapse onto the sofa, and tell yourself a lie. I'm just going to do a quick check on my phone to decompress.
You open an app, you start scrolling, the algorithm takes hold, and suddenly you blink, the room is dark, and it is 12:30 a.m.
You have completely gone overboard with your screen time. You didn't intentionally do anything, but the night has evaporated.
And the consequence of going overboard in the evening is severe. You experience the exact opposite of rejuvenation. You wake up the next morning feeling physically depleted, your eyes are tired, and worse, you carry a heavy burden of self-directed anger.
You are furious with yourself for squandering your limited free time on meaningless digital consumption.
That anger instantly reactivates the stress cycle, virtually guaranteeing that you will start the new day as a highly stressed, incredibly confused penguin.
The contrast between the wholesome evening and the overboard evening is profound. The instructors summarize this entire dynamic with a line that really anchors the whole lesson. They say normal life can be very beautiful when we actually live it, not only rush through it.
That is a remarkably grounding perspective. It strips away the obsession with optimization and reminds us that the mundane moments are not obstacles to be hurried past. They are the substance of the life itself.
It's a perfect summation of their philosophy. Now we've taken this extensive journey through the chronological timeline of a completely normal day.
We've analyzed the psychology of the morning, the defenses of the commute, the deep water of the office, and the airlock of the evening.
But the true value of this source material is the linguistic toolbox we've acquired along the way. However, instead of just reading a list of definitions like a textbook, let's actively demonstrate how this vocabulary shifts the narrative.
Let's look at how utilizing these words transforms a typical complaining conversation into an exercise in agency and emotional granularity.
That's a highly practical application. Let's construct a hypothetical scenario. Imagine you run into a colleague or a friend at the end of a very difficult Tuesday.
The default low granularity interaction usually goes something like this. They ask, "How was your day?" And you reply, "Terrible. I was so busy, everything was crazy, I'm just exhausted."
That default response is entirely passive. It frames you as a victim of circumstances. Busy and crazy are vague clouds of stress.
But watch what happens when we inject the specific vocabulary from the transcript into that same scenario. They ask, "How was your day?" And you reply, "Well, the morning was brutal. I totally went overboard with the snooze button, so I started the day feeling completely scattered."
Immediately, the narrative shifts. By using "went overboard" and "scattered," you were taking ownership of the morning's friction. You identified the cause, the snooze button, and the specific resulting cognitive state.
Exactly. Then you continue the story. "By the time I got to my desk, I was absolutely swamped. The inbox was a disaster, and I could feel myself getting completely frazzled. So I had to stop, make a list, and just whip through some easy admin tasks to get my head above water."
Notice the precision there. You distinguish between the external pressure being swamped and the internal threat becoming frazzled.
More importantly, you articulated the specific tactical countermeasure, whipping through tasks to regain momentum. You are narrating a story of problem solving, not just suffering.
And then you finish the narrative. By 3 p.m., my social energy was gone, so I managed to politely wiggle out of a useless sync meeting. At 5, I just had to cut to the chase and log off. Now I'm going home to put my phone in a drawer and have a completely wholesome evening so I can actually feel rejuvenated tomorrow.
That reframed narrative is incredibly powerful. You haven't changed the facts of the difficult Tuesday. It was still a demanding day.
But by utilizing this specific vocabulary, you have transformed a chaotic, stressful blur into a structured, manageable sequence of events.
You articulated your challenges, the strategies you used to mitigate them, and your intentional plan for recovery. This isn't just about sounding more articulate, it is about cognitive framing.
This raises an important question, honestly. It suggests that the words we choose don't merely report on our reality, they actively construct it.
Yes.
If you continually tell yourself, "My job is crazy and I'm always exhausted," your brain will look for evidence to confirm that helpless state.
But if you tell yourself, "I am currently swamped, but I have the tools to rip through the immediate priorities and protect my energy," you empower yourself. The vocabulary serves as an internal operating system.
Is the ultimate value of emotional granularity. Equipping ourselves with a richer vocabulary allows us to process our own daily emotions with clarity.
When we can name the specific type of exhaustion we are experiencing, whether it is the deep water of being swamped or the overcooked brain of being frazzled, we are no longer victims.
We become objective observers of our own complex internal states, which is the prerequisite for managing them effectively.
So what does this all mean for us as we navigate our own routines?
As we wrap up this deep dive into the language of our daily lives, the core takeaway from the instructors at Speak English with Class is incredibly empowering. Your day might feel entirely normal. It might feel repetitive or entirely mundane.
But inside that normal day, there is a rich, dynamic, and highly complex story unfolding.
You wake up, you negotiate your entry into consciousness, you deploy the auditory shield for your commute, you navigate the deep water of your obligations, you diplomatically wiggle out of traps, you execute the small reset, and you choose between the digital void or wholesome rejuvenation.
You do not need a perfect, hyper-optimized, Instagram-worthy routine to have a meaningful day. You just need the honest sentences to understand the day you actually have.
And as we close, I would offer one final provocative thought for everyone listening to explore on their own.
We've extensively discussed how precision in language clarifies our internal states, but consider the long-term compounding effect of that precision.
If you consciously, repeatedly choose to describe your restorative habits as wholesome and your chaotic moments as merely being temporarily swamped, could that deliberate linguistic framing fundamentally rewire your neural pathways over time?
Could the simple act of continually upgrading your daily vocabulary be the cheapest, most accessible, and perhaps most effective form of cognitive behavioral therapy available to us?
That is a brilliant concept to sit with. Vocabulary is an accessible form of daily cognitive therapy. I want to thank you, yes, you listening, for carving out the time to share a piece of your noisy, highly demanding day with us.
We know how valuable your attention is.
I highly encourage you to test this out. Try deploying just one of these phrases tomorrow morning. Acknowledge your confused penguin state, boldly declare your toast to be honest, or actively choose to whip through a task that has been paralyzing you. Until next time, keep analyzing the mundane, keep narrating the beautiful complexity of your normal life, and we will see you on the next deep dive. Goodbye.